before we start our, well, we have announcements and things to talk about, so, Selectman Daley?
I just wanted to say, I think all of us were at the Martin Luther King celebration yesterday, and thanks to the committee that worked on that. It was a great occasion and very, very nice. We had the Workmen's Circle chorus and the high school a cappella girls group, Notify, is that?
Yep.
And the jazz band from Baker School, and Ayanna Presley, an African-American city councilor from Boston, who spoke and was excellent. And Malcolm Cawthorn, a high school teacher at Brookline High School, was the sort of MC. But special thanks, I think, go to Jessie Mermel, our former colleague here on the Board of Selectmen, who was the chairman of the committee that planned that and put it together, and she was actually there and kicked things off yesterday, even though I know she was having to text message and set up interviews for the governor as she was listening to the speeches and singing. So, and we appreciate her being there. I think it was a very nice occasion.
Additions?
Agree completely. I thought Ayanna Presley's keynote address was absolutely the best I had heard from going
She's
to
clearly
these,
a pro.
going to these things after several years. She was absolutely moving, and my 13-year-old daughter sat through every word of it and completely agrees. And I want to give a special shout out to Selectman Daley made reference to the Workmen's Circle Community Chorus. And, you know, the connect between Yiddish choir and the works of Dr. King may not be immediately apparent to some, but I got to tell you, there's something that it really has an air of synchronicity about it. You're dealing with the songs of an oppressed people, and it's a direct corollary to the 1960s civil rights movement, I think. Two oppressed people who saw beyond their own oppression and saw that oppression is a worldwide phenomenon, a worldwide cause, and I think that the point comes out beautifully in the songs of the Yiddish folk songs of the Workmen's Circle group.
Yeah. Can I just add, I should say that there we saw a wonderful video that Harvey Brovman did, and it was a group of Brookline High School students had gone during the February vacation week to the South, to Alabama, and they met with people that had been involved in the real figures of the civil rights movement, including John Lewis, the congressman, and it was a very moving video, I thought. And some of the kids who are going to go on the trip this year were out in the lobby, and I just want to tell they were fundraising. So it was a.
Actually, I have the details.
Okay.
All right.
I'll leave it to you.
I'll follow up with that, and I would like to say that it was not just the opportunity to see the video, which it by itself was impressive, but clearly the experience that the students who took the trip felt had been somewhat, it was certainly transformational to their lives. As a person who grew up in the South, I'm familiar with many of the places they visited, and I think it's very important to maintain that connection to the places that were also very important to the civil rights movement, and where the actions of Martin Luther King's leadership are still felt very, very deeply. The trip is called Sojourn to the Past, and other school groups also participate. It's not just Brookline High School, but there is there's been two groups for 2 years, and we saw a video from the second year's trip. There will be a trip this February vacation with a new group of Brookline High School students, and they need to raise funds. So there is an event on Monday, January 28th at the Village Smokehouse called Take a Bite for Civil Rights. And there is a website, if you go to all one word, takeabiteforcivilrights.weebly, weebly.com/, there will be details. I think it was an inspirational trip for the kids, and I think as others are able to participate in subsequent years, it's a very important link for us to maintain, and I certainly think that we should all do whatever we can to help support them in their fundraising efforts. So, other comments?
Yeah, I think-
Selectman Benka, you haven't said anything.
Well, I just wanted to say that as I was coming in, I heard Selectman Daley mention Jesse Mermel, a former selectman. And I wanted to note that the Martin Luther King Day event had really had been ignored for several years, and it was revitalized under Jesse and under the committee with whom she worked, who really do deserve credit for pulling together this event and I think making it as meaningful as it has been the last couple of years. There's clearly a lot of work that goes into something like this, and both Jesse and the committee should be thanked for that.
I think they have reinvigorated it, and I actually was feeling about yesterday, hard act to follow, guys.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
But it was inspiring.
We
Okay.
should just add that in their, they suggest that you just Google Brookline Sojourn. If you can't
Okay.
remember
If you can't remember that long thing that I just
that
read out.
Sojourn without the E on the end.
SOJOURN, Brookline Sojourn. You'll find out information about the planned trip for this February. Okay, and while we're talking about dates, this Saturday, January 26th, there is the climate change event that will be around Brookline Town Hall. And we had a presentation last week, but I'm just going to remind everybody that you can both recycle styrofoam and outgrown formal wear for kids who are looking for things for various events that will keep them from having to go out and purchase something for a one-time prom. So there's more information at www.brooklineclimateweek.org. Okay, and then in our events announcements, there is a Rotary event coming up. Mr. Berkey, would you like to come forward and tell us about it? You can bring your assistant if you like.
I thought my assistant was going to join me, but she shied away.
Okay.
So thank you all for having me in. This is the third year that we're doing our Have a Heart Chocolate Extravaganza. Proceeds from this in the past and this year as well will be going to fight hunger in Brookline. So over the course of the past 2 years or so, we've given away almost $40,000 to the Brookline Emergency Food Pantry, the Brookline Food Co-op, and a couple of other players in the area. There are going to be 16 restaurants, cafes, bakers, and chocolatiers at the event, all distributing their samples of their wares. It's the sort of event where you could eat as much as you possibly want, go into a diabetic coma, pass out on the floor, and no, it's really a very good time. So it's this February 3rd from 12 to 3 p.m. at Pine Manor College, which is actually a shift.
That's
this is
important, very important.
Yeah, it's a new location for us. Unfortunately, the Holiday Inn, where it was in the past, can't accommodate us, but we're really excited about having it at Pine Manor College. It should give the event a very different look and feel. For those of you who haven't been to, I forget exactly what the room is called at Pine Manor. Do you guys?
In the Dana Hall?
Yeah,
Dana Hall?
yes, yeah. It's almost much more formal. It's got a great feeling to it. The Brookline Symphony Orchestra, who has played the past 2 years, will be joining us again, which certainly adds a nice element to it as well. I have to thank Brookline Savings Bank for being our main sponsor. Feed Brookline, Harvey Brovman was referred to. Harvey Brovman, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but Harvey Brodman does an absolute tremendous amount of things for the town as a whole, and I just certainly want to give him recognition. He's the force behind the Feed Brookline program, and I don't know how much he's raised already this year. We're 3 weeks into it, but it's thousands of dollars for food causes. Just a few stats about hunger in Brookline and what the food pantry's been going through this past year. Demand for food is up 65% in the town. That is in the food pantry. There, in 2011, was an average of 85 visits per week by individuals in the community. This year, it's up to about 110 per week, or I should say 2012 is up to about 110 per week. So that's a massive increase for a tiny little food pantry, and they need the money. They need money to keep it running. This is a stat that I say every single time I talk in front of any group of people about Brookline and the needs that exist in Brookline, but we're all familiar with this stat. Almost 14% of the population lives at or below the poverty line, and I think we need to say that stat again and again and again to remind people that although we are a wealthy community, there are those who are definitely not. So without further ado, let me give you, and this is another long email address, so I'm going to apologize, but it's 2013 Rotary Chocolate Extravaganza.eventbrite.com, and I'm going to make the same suggestion the high school students made. I suggest Googling Brookline Chocolate 2013, and it'll bring you to the landing page to sign up. But tickets are on sale. They are $15 for an adult, $10 for children, and seniors and children 5 and under go for free.
And buy in advance, because it's more at the door, right?
It is, yeah,
No,
thank you.
I think you got sold out last year. 'cause
It
I
got sold out
wasn't
last
able
year
to
and the
get a
year before.
ticket.
So we actually did open it to walk-ins. There were a few spaces. We did that depending on how clear the space was. Of course, we were doing a very careful count of how many people were coming and going within the space. But as we saw the opportunity for those who hadn't purchased their tickets in advance, we let them come in, but there was a surcharge for that. So last year, we had about 400 people come. The year before was about 400 or 500 people come. So this year, there's no reason why there's not going to be another 400 or 500 people that come to this event. So it's a really great event.
Especially with no Patriots in the Super Bowl.
I wasn't going to bring that up. I'm from New York. You know that, Kenny.
Maybe
Doesn't
this
hurt
is a
me.
distraction from the disappointment everybody's feeling.
That's
Brownie,
right.
sorrow, and molten
Right.
chocolate. Huh?
That's right, exactly. Well, the nice thing about this event, too, even if the Patriots were in it, I strategically avoided saying that it was on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
But it's from 12 to 3 on Super Bowl Sunday.
Important to say the time, actually.
Yeah. So it's 12 to 3. So it ends 3.5 hours before kickoff, and still plenty of time to get out there and do your thing.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you want to mention some of the organizations that are the chocolatiers who are going to be participating?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Party Favors, who, they do this amazing job. I mean, they actually take up 2 tables every year, and we gladly give them 2 very long tables to set up this amazing display that they do. The fireplace is going to be there. Olecito is going to be there. Running through my mental list. I just went through this.
Well, that sounds like an interesting
Serendipity,
variety
I think,
anyway.
is-
Yeah, it's a huge variety. We're actually,
Serenade?
Serenade is going to be there. Yeah, by popular demand, we're actually going to have some real food for people. So the Golden Temple, the Golden Temple is going to be there. Osaka is going to be there. Otto Pizza is going to be there. If I had my list, I could go.
Okay.
Well,
But,
that
yeah.
sounds like a pretty good range.
It is just really a fabulous event.
Thank you.
And one has to use some good judgment when you go there. You
Take it
scout
slow.
it out first.
Yeah.
And
That's
then-
right. You have to establish a strategy.
Absolutely.
You have to pace yourself.
Absolutely.
No,
You know,
it's
but, we joke about chocolate and sweets and, with the assumption that it's bad for you. I gotta tell you, I've been reading up on diet plans lately for a friend of mine who thinks he has to. And I keep coming across the same bit of information every place I turn. Dark chocolate.
Yeah,
is
dark
really
chocolates
good
could be good for you,
It's actually
absolutely,
a
yeah.
good way of getting important nutrients, and as long as you're, in control of how much of it you're putting in your mouth at
It's
one
the
time.
sugar that will kill
It's the
you.
sugar that's the bad. Chocolate itself is.
Just have plain old bitter chocolate. Not
That's
everybody wants to do that, of course.
And wash it down with
Yeah.
red wine.
That's right, that's
There you
right.
go.
All right, so it will be on February 3rd from noon until 3 at Pine Manor College, which I believe is at 400 Heath Street.
Correct.
And
Chestnut Hill.
there is a fair amount of ample parking
There
available.
is, yeah, there should
Okay.
be plenty of parking.
All right,
And
well,
it is a bit of a walk, but it is reachable from the Chestnut Hill Green Line Station.
Reservoir. No?
No, Chestnut,
No, Chestnut Hill.
Chestnut Hill.
Chestnut Hill,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's, probably about a 5-6 block walk from there.
Not too bad,
But
though.
it is,
But on the other hand, if you're going to go die for chocolate, you might as well walk back and forth.
Well,
to
that's
the tea.
right, that's
Yeah?
what you walk it off at the end, that's exactly
Number
right.
60 bus actually stops in Route 9 very
Right.
close.
There you
yeah,
go,
that's another option.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Berkey. We look forward to seeing you on February 3rd.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on now to our miscellaneous calendar and the question of the minutes from January 15th. Are there any corrections or additions?
A very small edit.
I had a
Okay.
small edit too.
Then I move that we approve the minutes for January 15th, 2013 as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein? Chair votes aye, when she's not choking. And the next item is to approve a feasibility study agreement in order to satisfy the requirements of the Massachusetts School Building Authority that will permit us to go forward with the renovations of Devotion School. So, actually, Mr. Kleckner, would you tell us just what the next steps are in this process?
Sure. As you know, the Devotion Project has been identified. We've been invited to apply to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and this is really the first major step in the process whereby we will be entering into a feasibility study, and this part of the project will be reimbursed, and it sets up the standards and the parameters for that agreement and reimbursement, and this is called the feasibility study agreement. We did have a boilerplate version in your packet. We just this afternoon received the version that had everything filled in, and there, of course, are some details that you're aware of, but the project cost is up to $1.75 million, I believe. Is that right, John? $1.75 million, which we just appropriated at this past fall's town meeting. And at this point, we are being guaranteed a reimbursement rate of about 38.5%, I believe. But all of this is incorporated within the agreement, and the vote we're asking, 35.84% is the projected reimbursement rate for the feasibility study. And so this vote will ask the board to authorize me as a town administrator to execute the agreement. I would say that once we sign this agreement, we will be invited to attend the MSBA meeting on the 30th of this month, at which time we expect the authority to vote to approve this and go forward.
Okay, questions? Selectman Daley?
Yeah, on Runkle, we
You've
got,
done this before.
yeah, we got up to 41% with the green energy things and so forth. So I assume, do we still have that option?
I
Yes, we
believe
will.
there are some bonus points, but since the project hasn't been designed yet, or we don't have those standards in place, presumably they couldn't be used until we've got the actual project moving. But there are bonuses available.
Okay, well, I would urge those of you who are working on this project to
Go for the bonuses.
seek the maximum, not only for the benefits we get on the reimbursement, but because I think we benefit from an energy-efficient building.
What I wonder, Nancy, is whether the bonus points actually, even on Runkle or on Heath, applied to the feasibility study or to the early
No.
stages. Because
Yeah,
I
no, I don't think
think
so.
it's when you get to the final,
Yeah, you have to
Project
actually
work.
have to show you're designing.
Right, and I should
Right.
I should correct it, it's incentive points, which have their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 possible categories, not all of which, I mean, one is for a newly formed regional district, for example. We certainly wouldn't qualify for that. But energy efficiency definitely is something, and perhaps if it's major reconstruction, renovation, or reuse, look like two categories that,
We're
Devotion.
also seriously considering the CM at risk, which is the second.
yes, and right, exactly. CM at risk is a form of agreement with the project manager, which apparently also would earn us some incentive points. So there's several categories.
has town council approved this? I know that this just landed on our desks this evening in this final form.
She
She got
has
this with
seen it.
everything completed?
Not completed. The only things that were put in there were the name of the school, 1.75 million, and then the map of the,
Okay.
There's a set of documents that we also will have to submit that are separate from this, and the town council will be overseeing
Okay.
to make sure we get it all properly done and executed.
Yeah, for example, on page, I'm not sure that it's paginated. On page 16, the notice information has to be filled in.
Right.
So there's a little bit that has to be completed on this.
Right.
I was actually concerned with section 5.7, and I just wanted to just have someone assure me that this is all true. The district has obtained all necessary votes, resolutions, authorizations, appropriations, and local approval in accordance with formats prescribed or otherwise acceptable to the authority, and has taken all actions necessary or required by law to enable it to enter into this agreement. Is it accurate to say that
Yes.
we've got everything in place
For this phase, yes.
Okay.
Right. The vote of town meeting in the fall particularly authorized us to go ahead with this step. So we're presumably submitting the documentation in the correct forms. The town council will make sure that we do that properly. Okay, any other questions? Then I move that we approve the feasibility study agreement with the Massachusetts School Building Authority in connection with renovations to the Voshen School, and to authorize the town administrator to execute said agreement on behalf of the town. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item is the Lynch Golf Course. Ms. Paradis?
Hello, thank you.
So, what do you have in mind here? Drainage, I see.
Yes, so this is Phase 2 of the drainage project. It's the creek restoration and dredging of the creeks at the golf course. This will dredge the back 9 of the golf course to meet with the front 9 drainage system that was done last year.
Okay, questions for Ms. Paradis? Yes, Selectman Benka.
As somebody who has come up 18 with my waders on and drives past it on the way to school 3 times a week, what is this going to do for the 18th fairway?
Well, it should actually really dry that out as much as possible in that area. This will be the drainage that cuts across 14 into the back 9 up in the back. So that will, the course actually drains from the parkway downward toward Hammond. So this particular area will drain into the newly created creek between 4 and 6, and then over to the drainage area
big culvert.
on Hammond. So it should drain significantly, dry out the back 9, including 18 fairway.
Are there any perforated pipes being put in as part of this, or is this just opening up the creek?
This is just opening up the drains, which is pretty significant. It's what we did on the front part of the course too, and it's made an incredible difference for that part of the course, and we've seen some change in the back nine too. But in addition, we have another project that you folks awarded a couple of, probably a month or so ago, that will go in tandem to this project, and that's the bunkers on 10, and there's a drainage section on the 11th fairway that'll tie in, and that actually is drainage piping, and that'll tie into this project, to this major creek dredging project.
Okay, good.
So hopefully we'll be able to deliver a much drier player experience.
Selectman Daley?
Yes, so this is the account number, it's coming out of his golf CIP, so that's your revolving fund,
No,
is it?
that is, those are funds that were actually authorized by vote in, I believe, FY 2000. And so we borrow, the golf course borrows money incrementally over the years according to that vote back in 2000.
So you
And
mean
this,
you bond it?
yeah, it bonded money,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. So this is the last portion of this chunk of money.
Okay. And you pay the bonds back? out
Yep,
of your-
yeah, we pay the golf course pays the debt service on all the bonds.
Revolving fund. Other questions?
I just want to ask, we were happy with the work that was done on the Front Nine project last year?
Yes, we were more than happy. It actually exceeded our thoughts about
And
that.
happy with the contractor?
Yes, Sumco is a great contractor. We're lucky to have them.
Good. And I hit a Titleist 2 into that creek about 2 years ago. If they find it when they're dredging,
You'll have to tell us where it is, because they may indeed find that,
if
so.
it comes up, I would like it back. Thank you.
I thought that was meant to be a hazard, and if you remove it all, these golfers will just go right through at par. Okay. I move that we approve and execute a contract in the amount of $189,237 for Phase 2 of the creek restoration at the Robert Lynch Municipal Golf Course. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Could I ask one further question?
Sure.
Is there any thought of capturing this water at some point and using it for irrigation?
Wouldn't that be logical? Yeah, because we do actually irrigate the course. Right now, there is that thought, but it far exceeds our ability to pay for that kind of project. That's $1 million to $2 million project. So we have actually talked with architects and had a geological survey done for that purpose and identified a couple of areas on the course that could happen. But the way that we are able to actually pay back debt service, it's not something that we can do right now.
This would this foreclose that sort of a step in the future?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think this will
I mean,
completely take care of that.
this basically is capturing the water and it's sending it
Yep,
down toward the culvert, and I suppose one could always put a retention tank in at
a
that
tank,
point.
yeah, we thought more of a pond.
Yeah,
Actually,
or
is what you
something.
see at most
Yeah,
golf courses, yeah.
Okay,
It's definitely something in our long-range plans.
okay, but not foreclosed, not incompatible with this.
No, not incompatible.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you very much. We
Thank
did
you.
vote it.
Yes, I know.
Okay. Next item is a change order for the Runkle School renovation. Mr. Quigley?
Good evening.
Selectman Daley, do you want to ask?
Yeah, well, I think we're near the end here, and Tony can
Yeah.
tell us,
Looks like finish-up stuff.
yeah. I hope we finally have heat in the multipurpose room.
Yes, we do. We've had heat in the multipurpose room for a while now, and thankfully, the heat in the building and the commissioning of the systems is nearing the end, and there are, right now, any issues are quite minor. Of course, in the spring, we'll have to go back and recommission the air conditioning. That's something we haven't done yet, but I'm very pleased that we're near the completion of commissioning. Punch list will probably be finished up February break. And speaking of green buildings, we anxiously await the results of the Mass CHIPS audit, which we should hear from very soon. And So over the next couple months, the building commission is in discussions with the contractor to resolve any outstanding issues. But the change order in front of you tonight is change order number 46. It represents a number of credits and additions to the contract work in the net amount of $25,592 addition. And I can run through the items individually or take questions.
Any questions for Mr. Quigley? Selectman Benka?
Yeah, I just have one. Did you say you would, in the spring, be recommissioning the air conditioning, or did
Well,
it?
commissioning the
Okay.
air conditioning, not
So it has
recommissioning.
not been commissioned as of
No,
yet?
no.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
Selectman
the
Goldstein?
heating side of the equation has been obviously because we're in the heating season.
Right,
But
right.
that's our first cooling season.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Tony,
Selectman Goldstein?
I'd just like to hear about the bigger ticket items that contribute to that 25,000. So the first one's relocate cabinet unit heater and stair number one. What was the
Yeah, that was
cause of that?
a coordination issue with the handrail and the stairs and path of egress. The cabinet unit heater would stick out too far into the stairwell and the handrail. And it was in the old existing part of the building, so it was, it had to be relocated.
Paint the exterior galvanized fence and rails, not part of the original specs?
No, they weren't part of the original specs, and these were done on time and materials.
I see. Provide seismic bracing in multi-purpose room acoustic panels.
Missed on the plans.
Say it again.
Missed on the
Missed
plans,
okay.
not in the plans.
I see. And then the last one I want to ask about, provide fire alarm devices in rooms A113, A114, A131. So that surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, these are the red classrooms in the basement, and when we had our first fire alarm system, it was noted that there was no devices in these particular classrooms.
I see, these are older rooms than that.
Yeah, it's down near the boiler room. And so it was done on time and materials, which is, the real cost of the work, essentially.
Selectman Benka?
Yeah, without getting into any litigation issues, where do things, if you can, where do things stand with the architect on all of these change orders? And if you want to hold off on answering that, that's fine.
Well, I mean, it's something that the building commission is considering, and, but it's still, the focus has continued to be the completion of the
I
project.
understand, but this, I mean, there have been an enormous number of change orders on this project, and,
I think, though,
Assume
if
that.
you ask Tony on the amount, the percentage of the project cost that went to change orders, it's pretty much in line with our other projects. So I think we've certainly seen a lot of paper, and it's looked like a lot, but tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought that we're not really that far off.
Well, we're at about 8% on this project, and remember, it's an ad reno project, and we did have a lot of found conditions that were just, if you recall, the oil on the site, the buried building, on and on. And, that being said, any change order is certainly unwelcome and frustrating, obviously. It's not something we want to see. However, the library, the police, fire building, they're difficult projects, and I think in those cases, the change orders were probably around in the same vicinity as this year.
I guess the building commission obviously is, once the job is done, or consistent with getting the job done, is going to be looking at these issues, I take it, of responsibility for the change orders.
They're considering that.
Okay.
Don't really think Mr. Quigley can speak for the commission
Yeah.
on this. Okay, I move that we approve and execute, approve change order number 46 in the amount of $25,592 for work completed by GNR Construction in connection with Runkle School renovation project. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Quigley.
Thank you very much.
Next item is a question about possible legislation or strategies to address the inequitable Norfolk County assessment. And I'm going to ask Selectman Goldstein, who is our designated liaison and, I guess, representative at the county level, to tell us what's happening.
Right.
Bring us up to date.
Good, thank you, and thank you, Chairman DeWitt. As you know, and as you've heard from me on a few occasions, and as we've been urged to understand by some very concerned citizens, who I know are here tonight, there's a basic inequity in the, fundamental in the county system of government. We're not talking geography here, we're talking government, we're talking about a governmental entity, Norfolk County. And the inequities on two levels. First, of the original counties in Massachusetts, only a handful of them survive. And as a result, the municipalities in those counties are paying an annual assessment for services which brother and sister municipalities and counties which have been dissolved are not paying for. And probably the most important piece of that to consider is the legacy costs, what we call the legacy costs involved. That is to say, the pensions and the OPEBs, the unfunded post-employment benefits, the health insurance that come from years of county government at a time when those legacy costs were not being adequately planned for. So, to put a sharper point on it, in communities such as Newton, which was formerly part of the Middlesex County government, the county has been dissolved, and the city of Newton no longer pays anything towards those legacy costs from years of county government, whereas Norfolk County and the communities that make up Norfolk County are all paying for those legacy costs, even though the state has taken it on in other communities. Also, there's another level of inequity, and that is the way by which the county assessment is made. It's made based on the basis of your total property tax assessment. In Brookline, we have the largest property tax assessment in the county of Norfolk, and as a result, we are paying 16% roughly of the total assessment. The county makes money in a few different ways, including registry of deeds fees, but of the assessment portion, we're paying 16% of that. And that's a lot, considering that the town of Brookline derives essentially no services as a result of that assessment. We do not make much use of the county engineering office. We don't derive our veteran services through the county as other communities do. We don't derive our animal control services through the county as other communities do.
But we could hire them to chase our turkeys.
Yeah, exactly. So as a result, we've been asked by town meeting to take this up with the legislature, and as a result, I want to report to you. Actually, before I go there, let me say this is all coming to a head right now. The timing is for legislative action and for the discussion we're having here tonight couldn't be better timed. And the reason for that is that the Norfolk County government is dealing with a structural deficit as they plan for fiscal year 2014. And not just Norfolk County, but Plymouth County, which is one of the surviving counties, as well as Bristol County, are also struggling to balance their budgets right now. So the heat is on fiscally for the counties, and it's time that the legislature is going to have to act and do something. What our goal is to see not a Band-Aid put on it, a temporary fix, a temporary influx of cash, but a permanent solution to the inequities that I just described. So there's been some encouraging developments. For one thing, as you know, I've been a representative on the Norfolk County Citizen Advisory Board, and my pleas that to my fellow advisory board members have gone largely unheeded over the last year and a half when as I speak to them, because it wasn't really on anybody's radar screen. Well, all of a sudden, that's not exactly the case. Now, I'm finding among the more burdened communities, the more similarly situated communities to Brookline, I am getting some reaction. They're starting to see the inequities themselves, so we're starting to see some work being done on this. So currently, there are 4 bills which have been filed on Beacon Hill as a result of this Norfolk County fiscal problem. And I want to go over those 4 bills, tell you how I feel about them, and tell you what the meetings that I've had so far to discuss them. And then I know our citizens are going to tell you about more about that. So the first bill is Brookline's own home rule petition, which calls for, and this was as passed by town meeting in the fall, and I must say, again, the timing was perfect on it. And this was Brookline's vote to be, that Brookline shall no longer be a member of Norfolk County, and therefore, assumably, be removed from its obligation to pay a county assessment. I don't know that we have a statutory ability to do that, but it certainly drives the point home strongly, and I'm glad that we have this tool now. As I'm talking to our elected officials on Beacon Hill, it is a nice bit of leverage that I can say to show just how upset Brookline's taxpayers are about this. The second bill is a refile of a bill that was filed a year ago, didn't get much traction on Beacon Hill last year, and that's because this wasn't a hot issue last year. This year, I think this will be it is getting traction, and I think this could form the basis for our solution to this. And this, to quickly recap what this bill is about, is that excuse me. That one of the funding mechanisms for the county government is the deeds excise. Every seller of real estate pays a tax of $4.56 per $1,000 in value. And I think people don't realize that a great deal of, most of that money, 70% of that money actually goes right into the state's, excuse me, general funds. It doesn't fund county government. A lot of people are under the mistaken assumption that it does fund county government. So this bill, which was proposed by the commissioners, would change that. It would take the bulk of that deeds excise and use it to fund county government. And the effect of that would be to eliminate the municipal county assessment completely. So that would end the problem here. Brookline would no longer be paying $700,000 a year and rising towards as an assessment towards county government. It also deals with the long-term legacy obligations in a way that has a substantial chance of working. The 2 other bills that have been filed are not bills that I would recommend. These are 2 Band-Aid solutions proposed by the county commissioners. They're well-meaning. They may have a indirect benefit to Brookline in that they may keep the Norfolk County out of its immediate fiscal problems, but they wouldn't solve the long-term solution, the long-term problems. The first is to add $10 to the recording fees for each document recorded at the Registry of Deeds, just to provide some cash influx to the county. The second one, which is a little bit more interesting, is a combination of some money from the deeds excise tax, but also would end a payout that the county is responsible for, the continuation of efforts piece. The short story is that when the sheriff's department was taken out of county governments and made a part of state governments, the way the state dealt with the legacy costs there was to require that each county continue to pay an annual tribute to the state government to pay for those continuing legacy costs.
Is
Plymouth-
that including the counties that have been dissolved?
No, no, that's the whole problem. Plymouth County, I'm told, is so outraged by this continuation of efforts charge that they have refused to pay it. And there's litigation pending between Plymouth County and state government over that right now. So it's a likely place for us for the county commissioners to draw a line. But on the other hand, it doesn't do what we really want it to do. Let me tell you very quickly about what I've been up to, and then we'll hear from our citizens on this. So I've had meetings now, two or three meetings with Frank Smizek, our Brookline representative, who has filed our home rule petition and is also a co-filer on the second one, the excise tax one, which would eliminate it. We've also, Representative Smizek and I have also met with full staff with Senator Cream and her aides, and pleaded the case. Dan Matthews, the county manager, was there as well. And this was, we got Senator Cream's full attention on this, and I feel pretty confident that she came away with that meeting understanding completely what we're asking for, and with a feeling of optimism that it might actually happen. In the last week, I've also had a meeting with Representative Coppinger and just today, as a matter of fact, with Representative Moran, both of whom hear our plea and have vowed support for the first two of the proposals that we're talking about here. It's actually interesting the way the dynamics work. That our representatives who are across the county lines, Representative Coppinger and Representative Moran, most of their constituents are across town lines in Boston, in West Roxbury and Brighton, but that's also crosses county lines. So the fact that they sign on to this bill actually helps to get some additional traction, because it's not all Norfolk County legislators who are arguing for this. Representative Sanchez and I, our last representative, are meeting next week, so I'll have more to say about him shortly. So that's where we stand. I think we've got the best possible effort on this at this point, and the best possible chance for a positive outcome. But it's by no means guaranteed, given the state's own
It's,
fiscal
I think,
crisis.
very helpful for there to be at least another county taking this seriously. I have to say, the basic inequity here is very hard to understand, and particularly those legacy costs where, in the case of Norfolk County, functions that were removed from the county we continue to be responsible for those legacy costs, which were also taken over by the state in the dissolved counties. So it's absolutely inequitable. There are probably other adjectives I could use, but I won't. All right, so if Mr. Levitan and Ms. Nabel would like to come forward. Lebo, sorry. I'm looking behind you and seeing the other Fred.
Just use Fred L., I think.
Yeah, right. One of the
I'm
Fred.
number one, he's number two.
Okay, all
Easy to
right.
keep us.
Well, actually, since I suspect Ms. Nabel drafted your letter, why don't you let her speak?
Let me start off before I even get to the letter, and then I'll let her speak. How's that? Fred Lebo, member of the Advisory Committee and the Capital Subcommittee for the town. Of course, as a member of the Advisory Committee, we represent the town. I don't represent other communities. Back a few years ago, if everybody remembers, the town meeting asked the selectmen to contact other communities and to get a consensus of other communities. The selectmen haven't done that. So what you see in front of you and what's been drafted with not only from our group, but from Plymouth County group, selectmen, members of their executive staff,
We've been meeting in Hingham, so it isn't just us anymore. And in fact, Dukes County is coming right behind us. So this is a snowball. The fact of the matter is that the community, the county government, while it's very strong in other states for a variety of reasons, it has no business here. Governor Patrick wants to get rid of it. Secretary of State wants to get rid of it. And trying to make the government work, when you really stop to think about what they provide, is so minimal. I've contacted small towns, big towns. You just don't get what you pay for. So what we've done is we've provided you with two documents, which I will let Bobby Nabel, who's been she's the wordsmith, provide you with the two things that we have basically came up with. One is a resolution to go to each town, fill in the amounts. There's an amount right here, dollar amount. And then it's also, why do you want to leave Norfolk County? We are assuming that some people are just not as knowledgeable as the people here. I mean, we're very knowledgeable. I mean, I've been involved in this now with 3 years. So it isn't because I'm so upset. The town needs the $715,000 that was last year. It's going to go up this year. We need the money. It's that simple. So I don't see how my job is not to keep the Norfolk County government running. My job, the way I see it, is to protect Brookline, and based on that is to end the county government. And we're not alone. Now there's a whole group of people now who are doing exactly the same thing we are. We've sort of led the charge, and now I'm going to let Ms. Nabel speak, who's also a member on the advisory committee. Don't screw this up. I'm going to stand for moral support.
When we started this, it was because we felt that it was in the interests of Brookline to end the connection with Norfolk. We don't use the services. The costs are escalating each year. We realized that there were reasons why people were concerned about a solitary effort by a town like Brookline to withdraw from that system. What happened when we began to look at it was we realized that what's unreasonable is the continuation of the county system, this dual system that we have in Massachusetts. When the state ended, dissolved 8 counties in the 90s, that took 70% of the state's population. That means that there are now only 30% of people in Massachusetts who are subject to county government. The state also took the expenses for those counties. So we are paying for services we do not use in the face of the fact that 70% of Massachusetts residents are not. That makes no sense. So that what we think now, and we find that we are not alone, that in fact other municipalities are beginning to arrive at the same conclusion. That they are paying for services that they would not choose to support had they any choice, and that those services are far more expensive than can be defended, and particularly at a time when all municipalities are making very hard financial choices. So what we did was to meet with some representatives of other municipalities to talk to them to see how they felt. And what we're beginning to believe is that others have reached the same conclusion. That it doesn't make sense for the state to continue to operate this unbalanced and basically unfair system. That it doesn't seem likely that the state, having dissolved 8 of its counties, would assume that it wasn't going to dissolve the rest. There's no benefit particularly in having that dual system, and no rationality. So what we're hoping to do, and hoping that the town would become involved in, is in the mailing that we do to other municipalities. What would be in that mailing is a resolution that they would take to use as a model for themselves. The items that we've included in the resolution are the ones that we think are appropriate and relevant to Brookline. Other municipalities may have other kinds of concerns, and we would certainly want them to be free to express those and to make their own case. And as Fred has said, we also offered the reasons why it's important for them at least to take a look at what they're receiving from the county versus what they're paying, whether the services that are offered are the services that they would choose, or whether they would make other choices. It would be, I think, much more effective for them to receive that mailing from the town, because I think it's towns that we want to look at the issues and to find that they have something in common with ourselves. On the other hand, if for some reason it seems inappropriate for Brookline to do this of its own accord, we would still try to do the outreach. We're really no longer talking just about Brookline, though the amount that it costs us and that is continuing to cost us. We signed recently a bond with other municipalities in the county for $25 million to cover the agricultural school. We have one student in that school, and that one student is the only one that we can find for who knows how long. 70% of the students who go to that school are from outside the county. So the question of why we would be finding ways to maintain the functioning of the county is not clear. These are not issues that really serve the needs of our particular community. Doesn't mean that the agricultural school shouldn't exist. In fact, there was one agricultural school in the counties that were dissolved, and that one is now under the direction of the state. I mean, they're trying to find another resolution for that, but it does mean that it is no more appropriate for us to be maintaining and taking responsibility for an agricultural school than it is for anyone else. So that's where we are. That's why we've brought this material to you, and if there are any questions that you have, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a question only because the one county, and I do understand that it's not a direct county-provided service, is our municipal court, which is very valuable to the town of Brookline, and frankly, if it cost us money to keep it, I would certainly be in favor of supporting keeping a municipal court. So have you given any thought to how individual, let's say, components might be dealt with if there were and I know this is going to take some time because it will require the legislature to act, but have you thought about the fact that other communities might have a similar item that's currently under the county jurisdiction?
The only thing I can say about the county court is that the building belongs to Norfolk County. It leases the building to the state.
We know.
The decisions that are made about how that building is used or whether it's used are made by the state. And in fact, not so long ago, there was a question about whether they were either going to close the courthouse altogether. This had nothing to do with whether we were talking about withdrawing from the county. This had to do with the court system and its own evaluation of what its needs were. The other question that they talked about was changing the role of the courthouse. They have not done either, but what it did demonstrate was that that is not a decision that's connected to our membership or the existence of the county. It has to do with what the court system feels that it needs and what it needs to use.
Okay.
I would also point out that the government, they pay $30,000 a month to the county for the use of the courthouse. Obviously, the county, no matter what we do, doesn't want to lose that income. It's a tenant-landlord relationship. However, I suspect that if the county government was closed, I suspect that the state would somehow end up with the courthouse, that they wouldn't be paying $30,000 a month to, and they would be sort of running the courthouse, as they do in other municipalities right now. There's like, what is it, 14 other courthouses in Norfolk County. So that's the way it works. So I'm not worried about the courthouse at all.
Okay,
I want to concur with their conclusions about the courthouse. I don't think the courthouse is likely to be a chip in this discussion.
Okay.
I do want to disagree somewhat with part of what's said. There are a lot of communities in Norfolk County, and I'm sure in Plymouth County too, who are winners in this equation, okay? We're on the losing end of the equation. We pay a lot and derive nothing. By virtue of the fact that we're paying a lot and deriving nothing, there are other communities in Norfolk County who receive a lot and pay very little for it. And, that's a political reality that we have to be aware of. There are communities that use the engineering services, that use the veteran services, and, regional services are a trend. Brookline receives money on a regional basis for other things. It's just the geography makes no sense. There's no reason why we should be receiving our regional services by way of Norfolk County, which we're not even contiguous to. When we get regional service money, it's usually connected with Somerville and Cambridge and Boston and Newton, not with Medway and other fine communities that have little to do with us demographically.
I think, did you want to?
No, if you want to respond, that's fine, but I want to make sure that you're aware that this is not a no-brainer for the winners in the equation.
Sure, and I think it's certainly true that we don't need the engineering services because they are at a level that we can provide for ourselves, or there's also a question about whether buying those services, even for smaller communities, is a reason for supporting the Norfolk County government. I think it may very well be, but I'm still thinking that if we have an agricultural school, 70% of whose students come from outside the county, I'm not sure to what extent that's a benefit.
Yeah, well, the good news about the agricultural school is that they're basically, their budget balances, they're pretty self-sufficient. They're not a drain on the county budget as far as I've been able to see.
The one thing I could point out is that we've been having meetings in Hingham with small communities that pay like $88,000 a year. They feel they're getting screwed. They are not getting services for what they're paying, $88,000. For example, they're not engineering services. You get 5 surveyors. Surveyors on a typical job, $2,000 or $3,000. I mean, how many surveyors do you think people are going to use? They use $5,000 or $6,000 worth of surveyors. The kinds of things that the county provides is very minimal for the numbers that they pay. Now, clearly, their budget, which is $88,000, what they're paying, proportionally still hurts them the same way, maybe not quite as much as us, but that's what happens.
There's a larger community in Norfolk County, begins with a Q, that does pretty well.
Yes, and they probably
Right.
won't support it because one of their commissioners come from Quincy. But we'll end up with about 40 towns by the time this gets through.
But it's very clear, the argument that we can make is that we are subsidizing other communities for services that we do not benefit from. And I think that is just as simple and straightforward as you can put it. Selectman Binka?
Yeah, just talking about the high school and then communities being winners and losers, or the ag school, the agricultural school. If the numbers in this handout are correct, it says each year the county transfers $3.2 million to the school from tax assessments to fund its budget of $5.1 million. And what that means is that more than 60% of the school's budget is being funded by tax assessments from Norfolk County communities, despite the fact that only 30% of the students are Norfolk County students. So the budget might be balanced, but putting aside the equity or inequity within Norfolk County Norfolk County is subsidizing significantly communities from outside of Norfolk County with respect to the ag school.
Well, they pay a higher tuition.
I know, but according to this, its budget is 5.1 million. 3.2 million of that comes from Norfolk County community tax assessments. That's 60% of the budget, or more than 60% of the budget. So, I mean, if those numbers are correct, Norfolk County, all of the communities in Norfolk County are getting whatever the word you want to choose, by communities outside of Norfolk County. Also, I mean, and then you've got the more acute issue as to Brookline. If we're paying 16% of the assessment, 16% of 3.2 million is about $500,000 a year for one student, which is probably the most expensive student in the Brookline public school system. And, you know, that in and of itself is I think, outrageous. I do have a question about communities being winners and losers, and I'm sure that there are some that are winners and some that are losers. And my question would be, have we gone to the communities to say, and, you know, not just to the county commissioners, but to the, you know, to the selectmen or the finance committees or the city councils, and basically said, hey, what do you think? I know that this resolution kind of moves in that direction, but I'm wondering whether you guys have sounded out some of the other communities in Norfolk County, and particularly the ones who are getting hit with the big assessments, to say, you know, to find out whether at the local level they are sensitive to this issue.
That's actually why we've come to the selectmen, because we would like
Okay.
to solicit those communities and to give them information and have them look at it and decide how they feel.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Wellesley said, where do we sign?
I think to the extent
Yeah.
that the advisory council, where Selectman Goldstein has been a member, represents municipalities that are part of the county, his original effort when he first became our representative was to educate them, because it didn't seem to me that they really knew as much of this in the way of the facts. Maybe I've misunderstood or misrepresented Selectman Goldstein, but I had the sense that they were saying, what are you talking about?
Yeah, limited improvement on that. I mean, I do what you just suggested. I've, you know,
Yeah.
gotten to some FaceTime with representatives of other Norfolk County communities, and I talked to each of them about what they derive and whether the county makes sense for them. And if you had asked me this in November, I would have said I get almost no sympathy from anyone. At the December meeting, when the current fiscal crisis for the county was presented, for the first time I had people joining sides with me and speaking to me after the meeting, and the first encouraging signs that we might have some brothers in this
Yeah.
this debate.
I mean, because another way to attack this, obviously, is for the communities, basically, to say, hey, we're not, you know, we're not going to fund this anymore.
Oh, that's certainly what Plymouth counties, or
And
the city,
if you
town of
get,
Plymouth
you know,
is
we've got
doing.
16% of the votes, and I don't know whether you can get to the 50%.
I think we can.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
Well, what I don't think you want to do is dissolve, there is a provision under the law where where, with the right vote, we could dissolve the county unilaterally, but that triggers a 20-year payout period, so I think we need a more fiscally responsible solution than that.
Under the legislation number 2, the Registry of Deeds excise, 70% now going to the state, that coming to...
89.
I'm sorry?
89%. The county gets 11. I'm
Okay.
sorry, take it back. The Registry of Deeds takes 11% of what it takes to operate the registry.
Okay.
89% is left over, and I think right now they get 10%, the county gets 10% on top of that. The rest goes to the state. So it's
Okay.
11% to run the
Okay.
registry, 10% goes to the Norfolk County.
So 21% is
So
retained and,
70,
Right.
I think you used 79%
So just-
goes to the
that's
state
what
general
breakout is.
fund, somewhere, say three-quarters to the state general fund. Just kind of backing into the numbers, if we're 16% and that's, and it's about $750,000 a year, so it'd be 6 times three-quarters of a million, right?
It's about $5-6 million.
Is the total operating budget? How much is?
That's
yeah,
what the state would have to pick
Yeah,
up.
it's about somewhere between 5 and 6 million. What is the registry pulling in each year? What is that 70%, 79% worth to the state? Would that cover the 5 to 6 million?
I think it's much more than that, actually.
Do we know?
I don't know what the number is, but it's more than 5, 6.
What
It's more than that, But what we're asking, what the second legislation is asking Beacon Hill to do is $5 or $6 million, though. It's not a budget buster, and that's why I feel like I'm getting encouraging feedback from the legislators that I've talked to so far. We're not asking for the world here.
Could I make one suggestion? That you also want to build in something for funding OPEBs
Well, that's
into
one
their
of the
budget.
big expenses.
Because Norfolk County is not addressing that at this time. And that,
Well, that is addressed in the second legislation. I mean, the thing is that
Okay.
the excise tax fluctuates from year to year. So in the bounty years of excise tax, it's going to OPEBs. That's the way they design it.
Selectman Daley, you've been
Yeah.
trying, and I should have
And that's-
controlled
well,
your
I was just
colleagues.
going to mention Dick's point about OPEBs. I mean, when you talk about the agricultural high school, as my understanding is that most of the county employees are employed there at the school. And in addition to, as you say, the heavy subsidy of the school's overall budget coming from Norfolk County, there's the additional factor that we're racking up this really large obligation for post-retirement benefits for those employees that continues to grow and is not being addressed in any way. So, and I would certainly support us sending this resolution with your reasons attached to the various communities in Norfolk County. I'm certainly in favor of that. But I would also ask if my fellow selectmen would join me in asking Mr. Kleckner to talk with Town Council's office on this issue, because I think that we are being taxed, because we are forced to make this assessment to Norfolk County. It is essentially a tax being paid by the citizens of Brookline, and we are paying for various services that people in other counties, not only are the people in other counties not asked to pay this same tax, so we are being unfairly targeted, but we are paying their same expenses through our income tax, our state income tax. So we are paying twice. And I would like Town Council's office to look into this, because I think we have a basis for litigation here. And we should be asking for money back from the many years that we have been paying too much.
Okay, any other
The
comments
only
from?
last comment I would make was that people have suggested if they switch me and Ken, and I go to those meetings with the representatives, they'll dissolve themselves.
Possibly so. Well, we appreciate the work that you've done, and we'll certainly take very seriously your recommendation that the resolution be circulated to municipalities in the county.
Can I make a
I think we
motion?
will be looking into other information, in particular, what resources are available from other communities that might want to participate, and in particular, Selectman Daley's suggestion that we move in the direction of litigation. But I want to say that I think we took this very seriously when it came up in the first place, And we sent our delegate, Selectman Goldstein, to kind of understand what was going on within the county government at that level. And I do think the tide has turned. The wind has changed, whatever phrase you want to use.
Could I actually make a motion and that we do
I
send?
would be happy for you to do that, but not right now, because I would like to know what I'm sending around and how I'm going to do it before we make a motion. We can do that at another meeting. I think
Okay.
I would like us all to read the resolution, see if we'd like to edit it. I've asked the town administrator to help us understand how we would distribute this, what the costs would be. Hold your motion. We'll entertain it at the,
Okay,
put it on the calendar for a vote, but not tonight, if you don't mind.
all right.
Okay, next item is the 2014 budget objectives and action list. And I actually have a couple of language suggestions, but I will turn this over to Ms. Goff to explain what the proposal is.
Good evening. What you have in front of you should be your FY14 drafted Board of Selectmen objectives. The action list actually is not here. We figured it might make sense to have a full Board of Selectmen before we talked about the action list. So what you have in front of you is your draft objectives, and I'm just looking for any feedback, comments, and next week I'll present you with a final version for you to vote on in time for us to get it into our budget book.
Okay, I've actually got a couple of specific, it's almost language edits, which I will tell you about, and then I will ask my colleagues. On the first page, item number 8, I would just like to specifically add the phrase mobile apps, and I think it could go after Brookline Online Portal. I would say mobile apps and supporting the word mobile app should appear there, because I'm sure that is one of the ways that we want to take advantage of the Brook Online Portal. And I just felt it
Do you
needed
wanna
to be
say
specific.
Mobile applications, or you want to use?
You can use the word mobile applications. My point
Okay.
here is that
All
we
right.
have them, and we want to acknowledge that they exist and encourage people to use them. That's all.
Sure.
All right, so just figure out how to fit that in. And then under, on page 2, under item 11, I would like to add the word continue under, on D, so that it reads to continue to seek opportunities. I feel that we actually have very substantially and aggressively been seeking opportunities to increase our affordable housing stock, and it's not like we haven't been doing it, so I think that word is important. And sort of on the next item, number E, because I believe that the town is unable to lead the rehabilitation, we don't control the sites at Durgan and Waldo, but I would love to have the word encourage or facilitate under E. In other words, instead of the word lead, substitute encourage, facilitate. I don't care which of those, but I want it to be clear that our goal is to have something happen, but also we don't control the site. And finally, in item number 22, particularly after our discussion, I would like to remove the word perceived. Okay. Item number 22. Okay, those are my edits.
Yeah, definitely take perceived out. I just have 1 and 7, to broaden the town's commitment to promoting, it says racial/religious. I think it should be racial, ethnic, religious, and sexual orientation diversity.
Is that how we say it? There's a long list of things that we could put in.
Once you start
Yeah.
doing that, you've got
You're excluding
probably
someone.
6
Yeah,
categories or
actually,
7
well,
categories.
it's
No,
just
no, I
racial
have a
just take
suggestion.
religious
No, no,
sounds
it's
more
okay. No, no,
diversity.
I appreciate that. There is a long list that is included in most of our equal opportunity document language, Melissa,
Okay.
which you can get probably from Sandra DeBow.
Sure. Yep, I'll check with her
I'm sure
tomorrow.
I've got it in papers that I have at home. I just don't have it all, but there's a very comprehensive list that would probably address, and I agree with Selectman Daley.
Well,
Either you just say diversity, or you put
Exactly.
the whole list in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Other edits, suggestions?
We can shoot you any edits
Sure,
by
you
email.
can email me
Sold.
up until tomorrow, Tuesday, next Tuesday, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa, and I would say, in spite of the edits, it's overall, I think, a reasonable sort of collection of the things that we ought to be doing,
Yep.
thinking about.
Thank you.
So, thank you. All right. Next item is the Neighborhood District Commission, Neighborhood Conservation District Commission. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that at our places this evening, we had a document that I've drafted based on consultation with town council. We sort of tried to reconcile language that's in the Neighborhood Conservation District bylaw, as well as a separate town bylaw that allows us to appoint associate members on committees. And what we were trying to do was be sure that whatever proposal we've had before us would be compliant in both respects. So, in compliance with the NCD Commission bylaw, I've shown a roster with a recommendation for having a plan to create staggered three-year terms is really what it is. It's trying to say that we have to start people at 1, 2, and 3 years, but then they would each be reappointed for a three-year term after the end of the first term in office. Is this clear to everybody? This is sort of a technical thing, but I want to be sure everybody's on board. So what we would be doing is creating an expanded Neighborhood Conservation District Commission whose role would be to prepare rules, regulations, and procedures and basically have oversight of all neighborhood conservation districts as they come before us. And the members would be 3 to be appointed by the chairman of the Preservation Commission, and I'm recommending that they be 3 individuals, 1 3-year term, 1 2-year term, and 1 1-year term. And then there would be 4 persons appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and I've suggested a 3-year, a 2-year, a 2-year, and a 1-year for those 4 members, and then 4 additional alternates. And just because I felt that probably we'd want people to make a commitment, I'm proposing 2 3 years, 1 2-year, and 1 1-year. But I don't have any reason, if you want to change these, it's okay. It just was trying to come up with a roster and a system that would give us the staggered terms at the end of the process. And then, in addition, there is a draft charge, which if people would like to make suggestions or recommendations about, I'm open to any that you may
Yes.
have. Yes, Selectman Benka.
In the first dark bullet, second open bullet underneath that, I would just say to codify design review guidelines, including specific guidelines for each NCD, period.
Okay,
I'm not sure that the commission can expand guidelines, and I think the remaining language introduces some confusion.
Sure.
So I would stop it there. They could certainly recommend to town meeting that guidelines be expanded and so forth, but I would just stop it after.
I
for each
totally agree with
NCD.
you, and just for clarification now, I had time to think about it. I believe that was a kind of shorthand to suggest that there needed to be guidelines for each district as created. And I
Okay.
think it's been addressed in that first sentence, so
Okay.
it's redundant,
And-
unnecessary.
And then in the second dark bullet, I would add the words "after appointed" or "as soon thereafter as feasible."
The language here says 90 days, which might be unrealistic.
Yeah, it's the language that says, just for people who don't have this in front of them, the language now says to present draft procedures and regulations to the Board of Selectmen within 90 days after being appointed. And I would add, or as soon thereafter as feasible, so that we don't put a gun to their head from the moment of appointment. And I would then add a final bullet, which is to review all reviewable projects that may come before the NCD Commission, since that, if and when there are reviewable projects that are presented, that will be part of their
Reviewable
Mission.
projects would have a capital R.
Right, capital R, capital P.
Reviewable
Right.
projects is a defined term in the NCD bylaw, so reviewable and projects would be capitalized. Yes, thank you, Ken.
Okay.
I agree with those.
Are we all in agreement about these language changes? I'm happy with them. Okay, I'm going to just read the first paragraph. I guess I'm going to read the language out loud because I think it's important to be on record for the public. The expanded Neighborhood Conservation District Commission is intended to support all neighborhood conservation districts that may be established in the town. Initially, the commission will be charged with formulating rules, regulations, and procedures. It is intended that as new districts are established, a representative from each district will be appointed to serve for at least one term as existing terms expire. Excuse me. And the following roster complies with the Neighborhood Conservation District Bylaw, Section 5.10.4, and also the Town Bylaw, Section 3.1.5. And I did go through the members. The charge then to the expanded commission is the following: to establish operating rules, procedures, and regulations, and a design review process that will be provided to applicants and the public. The NCD Commission should consult with Town Council and the Preservation Commission and may refer to rules and regulations regarding local historic districts as a model. And then a sub-bullet, to adopt rules and regulations after holding a public hearing. The NCD Commission may quote, and this is reading from the bylaw, may adopt and from time to time amend reasonable rules and regulations not inconsistent with the provisions of this bylaw or other bylaws governing the commission. And then there'd be a second sub-bullet, to codify design review guidelines, including specific guidelines for each neighborhood conservation district. And then big bullet, to present draft procedures and regulations to the Board of Selectmen within 90 days after being appointed or as soon thereafter as feasible. Another big bullet, to make regular reports to the Board of Selectmen as the regulations and procedures begin to be implemented, including any recommendations for revisions to the guidelines that would improve its ability to perform its responsibilities in preserving the character of the Hancock Village Neighborhood Conservation District and any additional districts that may be approved. And finally, last bullet, to review all capital R reviewable capital P projects that may come before the Neighborhood Conservation District Commission.
I'm sorry. May I ask one other
Sure.
question or just make one comment? Going back up to the sentence that in the third line of the first paragraph that begins with, it is intended that as new districts are established, a representative from each district will be appointed to serve for at least one term as existing terms expire. If, as you know, Chairman DeWitt, the Neighborhood Conservation District Enabling Bylaw permits one commission that deals with all neighborhood conservation district commissions, which is what we have with respect to local historic districts in the town. And it may not be feasible, depending on the number of neighborhood conservation districts that there are, to have one representative from each district. So I think it's okay as it is, where it says it's intended that, but I wonder if we want to say it's intended that as new districts are established, a representative from each district will, if feasible.
That's fine with me. The goal, and I think this was the intention when we originally thought we'd have multiple commissions, all
Right.
right, was that each district have some representation. And
Exactly.
if we have a single commission, it's much more difficult. But it was my hope that we'd find a way to provide, even if it were for a term, a representative, at least that way the total commission would be informed about that district's interests and concerns.
Right.
So if you want to add, if
Where-
feasible,
where are you
It would
changing
be,
the language?
it would be in line 4, after the words, "from each district will." After will, insert "if feasible."
if feasible.
Be
Yeah,
appointed.
I have no problem with that.
And obviously, that is the goal, but depending on numbers and if we or any future Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
stays with this model of a single commission, single townwide commission, it may not be possible.
Right, and it may be that eventually it'll be appropriate to amend the bylaw.
Exactly.
Or add something.
Exactly.
But since we seem now to be moving definitely in the direction of a single commission to serve the town, I was trying to meet multiple,
Yeah, no, and I
Goals.
think it would actually be fine without that language, since it's just an expression of intent, but might be better to
Sure.
insert the language.
Selectman Goldstein?
No, that
We are,
works
we
for
all
me.
right? Okay, then, having, I think now, gone through a pretty good review and edit, are we ready to move this and, I guess, to adopt this expanded neighborhood conservation district membership? I don't know what the word for it is, proposal
And charge.
and charge.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, so now that we have this, and when we get a cleaned-up draft, maybe next meeting, we'll be able to consider actually making appointments to the commission when everybody sees the final language. Okay. Moving along, we have some appointments. Now, we have, and I should say this in public, because we have boards and commissions with memberships in need of having appointments and also with expiring memberships, it is my hope that at every meeting, we will try to make some appointments, even though we may not be able to do all of the ones. I'm going to put a list out so that it will kind of force us into doing this. But tonight, I believe we are ready to make appointments to the Board of Appeals, to the Human Relations Youth Resources Commission, and to the Registrar of Voters.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
With my colleagues, are we all ready for those?
Yep.
And I want to make a correction on the Human Relations list that we got. There is a member listed named Laurie Dobkins, who's moved out of town, and so that should be indicated as resigned. So there are actually now a total of 5 vacancies. One of the vacancies would be for a student representative. Okay.
Could I just
Yep.
move for- let me just.
What's the question?
The question is just, I'm looking at the Board of Appeals dates.
Yep.
And this shows Jesse Geller as
Oh, that's gotta be a
2015
mistake.
already.
That's a
Maybe
mistake.
we voted him already, did we?
I don't think so.
No, I don't believe so.
I don't think we voted
So
members.
is he he'd be 2015?
He'd be 2012, and be eligible for
2015, oh, not
All right.
2016.
You're getting
No.
ahead of us, Mr. Fleckman.
We haven't made appointments. The reason for putting these on the list is we're
Right,
back still
no,
in
no,
2012.
no, I'm wondering,
I think that yeah, because he's listed as an incumbent.
Yeah,
still,
right.
So
Good.
I don't think we've made the appointments, and I do
We-
believe it's
it should be
2012.
Right, he's a
2012.
candidate
Gotcha.
whose term expired in 2012, and to be reappointed, it would go to 2015. And if we're wrong about this, and
No, no,
Patty
no,
Patty
I-
Parks will correct us.
I see what the
I suppose it could-
vacancies on this list have had the 3 years added,
Yes,
and the reappointments have, and the others have not.
yes.
So that's,
why it's
okay.
confusing.
Good,
Right.
okay.
All right, so, then, just to be clear, we have one incumbent whose term expired in 2012, and who, to be reappointed, would be given a term expiring in 2015. We're all clear about that?
Yes.
And then we have two candidates and a total of 3 vacancies, and there are 2 vacancies whose terms would expire in 2015, and 1 that would expire in 2014. Okay? I know it's confusing. So, I think the only then thing to be concerned about is whether or not the new candidates are given, and they will be, they're candidates for associate members, I should say that as well.
Right.
Then we have the option of one could expire in 2014, one could expire in 2015, or they could both expire in 2015. That's the only option that we have before us at this point. So,
I think we should fill them in for the longer term.
that's fine. I just,
First come,
I agree.
first served.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
agree.
All right, fine. I just want to be sure we're all doing the same thing. Okay? So,
Okay,
all right.
so why don't I start?
Now you understand what we're
Well,
going to do,
I do, I think.
you hope?
So on the zoning board of appeals, we have a expiring term. Mr. Geller's term expired in 2012, and he's interested in reappointment, so I will call for the vote for Jesse Geller for a term expiring in 2015.
Aye.
And for associate members, there are 3 vacancies and 2 candidates who have applied. And so my understanding is both of those will be for the full term. Avi Liss,
Aye.
Johanna Schneider.
Aye. Okay. Got through that one.
Then for the Human Relations and Youth Resources Commission, as you mentioned, there are many vacancies, but there is an incumbent who is interested in reappointment, Enid Shapiro, for a term expiring in 2015.
Aye.
And then a new candidate to fill a 3-year term vacancy, Brian Hoch-Leitner.
Aye.
Term, I guess this
Yeah, the
actually would be,
2014.
Well, he can be given either, I mean, we do have to assign
You
him
can give him
because,
Karen Fisher's seat.
give him the 2015 slot.
okay, all right.
Okay, so they're both 2015.
Where, I'm sorry,
Mr. Wang and Ms.
We have
I got you.
three-
Good,
Karen
yes.
Fisher expired
Yes,
in
yes,
12, so
right.
he can take that one.
Yes.
And then-
Right.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay. So
Thank you.
we've got 2 people
Okay.
now for 2015.
Or actually, I suppose we could give him one in 2013.
Oh,
He
come on,
would be
we've
on
done
to
it.
They're actually
16.
taking effect.
Yeah, right.
And then we have the Board of Registrar of Voters, which requires the respective Democratic and Republican town committees to submit names, which they have done, so I will list them in the order in which they've come in. So for candidates for 2015, Linda Goldberg.
Aye.
For a term expiring 2016, Andrew Mickel-Wraith.
Aye.
And for a term expiring in 2014, Victoria Whitney.
Aye.
Very good.
Okay, 3,
So.
that's good,
Just
we're
to,
moving.
just to be clear, you're not proposing that we vote the Neighborhood Conservation District people
No, I
tonight?
really felt that we needed to get the language that we voted tonight before us, before we take those votes, just because we made a lot of changes.
Okay, and we're also holding the Preservation Commission.
And we're holding the Preservation Commission, we'll try to do them next week. And that concludes the business of the Brookline Board of Selectmen for January 22nd.